Now, once we construct the shape functions in the quadrilateral element, let us go and see how we can map a physical element to the corresponding master element in case of quadrilateral element, where we have basically defined the shape functions, and then carry out the integration numerically to calculate the stiffness entries and the force entries. So, this we have already shown in case of triangular elements. So, in this case the size of the Jacobian and all, so will be remaining the same, but how do we map it and how do we calculate at certain points in the master element to find out the values of the stiffness entries and the force entries are illustrated in these slides. So, here I have taken a physical element E, alright, mapped it into the master element that has been shown as xi eta frame, alright. This we have already seen in the earlier slides. Now, how to map this quadrilateral element into this master element? We follow the same strategy as we did in the case of triangular elements, but in case of triangular elements we had only A naught plus A1 xi plus A2 eta, alright. But since there are 4 vertices involved and each of these vertices in the physical element will be mapped to the vertices of the master element, so we need actually 4 coefficients. So, the 4 coefficients are as follows: A1, A0, A1, A2, A3. So, this extra term has to be considered. Now, once we have decided the relation between x and xi eta, now we are going to plug these values of xi's and etas, okay, to get the corresponding value of the coordinates in the master element. So, this map basically shows that this node in the master element corresponds to this node in the physical element. Similarly, the node 2 in the master element corresponds to the local node 2 of the physical element E, and so on. So, we have put the values of xi's and eta. So, if we put xi equal to -1, eta equal to -1 in this relation, we get the first relation here, alright. So, similarly, the second coordinate xi equal to 1, eta equal to -1 will give us this. So, likewise, all these 4 corner points will give us these 4 set of equations, where x1, x2, x3, x4 are known to us because we know the coordinates of the quadrilateral elements in the physical space, okay. So, solving these 4 equations, we get these 4 unknowns A1, A0, A1, A2 and A3, alright. These are only the basically the functions of the x coordinates. Now, once we substitute this A0 in this expression again, what we get? We just collect the coefficients of x1. So, if we collect the coefficient of x1, we get A0. So, this is 1, here this gives minus xi, this gives minus eta and this gives plus xi eta. So, these are the terms that we have collected here correspond to x1. Likewise, we can continue with x2, x3 and x4. Now, if you look at these functions, these are basically the hat functions or the shape functions in the master element. So, this corresponds to n1, this corresponds to n2, third term corresponds to n3 and n4. So, this relation now has been written as x1 n1 plus x2 n2 plus x3 n3 and x4 n4. So, we have written it as a sum over I xi ni. Now, this ni is basically function of xi and eta, alright, because this is the shape functions that we have determined in the earlier slides. Now, similarly, if we follow the same mapping relationship for y, we will end up with y equal to yi, alright. So, now once we know this x and y coordinates, so if we give a value of xi and eta, okay, in the master element, if we find a point in the master element, suppose xi p eta p, okay, substituting this xi p eta p in these two expressions, we will get the corresponding xp and yp in the physical element. So, this is xp yp in the physical element, alright. So, now let us go ahead. So, our objective is to calculate the stiffness entry. So, that comprises of Ni comma x, Nj comma x, Ni comma y, Nj comma y. So, these are basically the derivatives of the shape functions in the physical space, the derivatives with respect to x and y. But we have defined the shape functions in the master element, that is in the xi eta. So, we have written these derivatives in terms of the derivatives of the shape functions in the master element. So, this tells del ni del xi del x, del ni del eta del x. So, that gives us ni x, that is del ni del x. So, likewise we have calculated all the partial derivatives of ni's and nj's with respect to x and y from the derivatives of the hat functions or ni hats in terms of xi and eta, alright. Now, in order to calculate this, we need to know what is the value of del xi del x, del eta del x, del xi del y and del eta del y. You remember how do we calculate this in case of triangular elements? We said dx is equal to del x del xi d xi, del x del eta, alright. So, that is how we wrote, and dy also we wrote like this, and that gives us the system of equations. So, this is the same equation written in the matrix form. So, that gives del x del xi d xi, del x del eta d eta. Similarly, del y del xi d xi, del y del xi d eta. So, that gives us dx and dy. So, once we know that, then what we did, we inverted that relation. We said d xi d eta is this matrix which we termed as Jacobian matrix J. So, we inverted J and obtained this, right, where this denominator is basically the determinant of the Jacobian matrix, alright. So, this gives us a relation between d xi d eta in terms of dx dy, fine. Then finally, what we did, we wrote d xi d eta in terms of dx dy as follows. We said del xi del x into dx, del xi del y into dy gives d xi, okay. Similarly, d eta is del eta del x dx, del eta del y dy, alright. So, now this relation we compared with this relation, alright, and we found out the derivatives del xi del x is equal to 1 by determinant of j del y del eta, alright. Similarly, del xi del y is basically minus 1 by determinant j del x del eta, alright. So, all these coefficients we can calculate, okay, in terms of these, alright. And what is the value of these guys? We already know the expression for x, that is xi ni hat, alright. So, we can take the derivative of x with respect to xi and eta. So, we can calculate these guys, okay. So, from this we can get the values of xi comma x and xi comma y, alright. So, that is has been shown here, okay, but in terms of the coefficients a naught, a1, a2, a3, b naught, b1, b2, b3. So, these are the coefficients that we used for mapping. So, let us go back and just show. So, these are the coefficients, okay. So, if I take a derivative with respect to xi, we get a naught, a1 plus a3 eta, alright. So, that gives a1 plus a3 eta. Similarly, with respect to eta gives a2 plus a3 xi. So, all the terms in the Jacobian matrix can be calculated this way. So, once we calculate these things, so we can now substitute in the Jacobian matrix and take the determinant of the Jacobian matrix. So, that says del x del xi into del y del eta minus del y del xi into del x del eta. So, that is has been written here, and since each of the terms are functions of xi's and etas, so we will have this term. So, where a1, a2 these are constants. So, these are in terms of a1, a2, a3, a4, alright, and are constants because these are basically function of those coordinates of the corner nodes. Now, we related the differential area in the physical element with the differential element in the master element, alright. So, with this. So, this we have derived for the triangular element already. So, now if we see, this is basically the ratio of two areas, alright. So, this cannot be negative. So, that is why it has been written as positive. Now, you just try to realize that j is a function of xi and eta. It is no more a constant, as in case of triangular element, it is no more a constant and it varies with xi and eta, and it has to be positive at all points in the master element. So, the j has to be always positive. So, now we have seen that if say this be a quadrilateral element initially, and we drag this node gradually like this, alright, to a point where the internal node of this quadrilateral element becomes greater than 180 degree, alright. Then in the vicinity of this node 3, this determinant of the Jacobian becomes negative, alright. So, that is why this kind of elements we have to avoid. So, while meshing, we have to look at the quality of the elements as well. We have to ensure that the internal nodes in a given quadrilateral should not be more than 180 degree. So, that we have to be aware of. So, once we get the relation between dA and dA hat, so what we do next, we evaluate these lambdas at certain points, okay, in the master element. So, where from we got this xp yp? We got it from xi p eta p. So, from a given point in the master element, we calculated the corresponding point in the physical element and we evaluated the function and we get the value of lambda naught, and the rest of the term, this we have already calculated, and this we have seen that this is a function of xi and eta. So, we can evaluate this at any point xi p eta p in the master element. Similarly, j has already been calculated as a function of xi and eta. So, the whole integrand is now can be evaluated at a certain point in the master element. So, I will define this integrand as psi, okay, which is a function of xi and eta. So, we evaluate this psi at certain points called Gauss points in the master element, multiply with the weight corresponding to the master element, and we will sum it up over all the Gauss points, okay, to calculate Kij numerically. So, the same way we can construct or we can calculate the force entries also, because in that case the derivatives are not involved, in that case the shape functions are involved. So, we can go and calculate the shape functions at those Gauss points and we can calculate the Fi's. Till now whatever we have discussed in solving the steady state heat conduction problem in 2 dimension using finite element method, all the steps has to be implemented in a computer program, so that we can run similar problems with say different material properties or maybe entirely different domain or with different boundary conditions. So, to facilitate solving similar problems with different conditions, we need to mechanize the steps. So, today we will be discussing about how a finite element code can be developed for solving the steady state heat conduction problem in 2 dimension, okay, and the what are the things that we should keep in mind while developing such codes. Now, first of all, we need to understand that we need to have an algorithm. So, what is an algorithm? It is basically a pseudo code with a step by step flow, okay, which denotes basically the flow of the code, or in other way an algorithm is basically something which is written in our own language, okay, in a step by step manner that demonstrates how the program should work. So, now let us first look at the algorithm that we will follow for solving the present problem in hand. First, we need to have a mesh information, okay, we need to collect the mesh information. So, what is a mesh? Mesh is basically the combination of the elements and the nodes that we get after the discretization. So, we have a domain in 2D, we discretized it using triangular or quadrilateral elements, and then we numbered the elements, and then we also numbered the vertices of the elements, that is as nodes, okay, and then we collected the coordinates of the node points. So, all those informations we need to collect in order to give the information to the computer program. So, this mesh information contains the connectivity information. What is an connectivity information? Connectivity information is basically the correspondence between the local node number and the global node number of all the elements in the discretized domain, alright. So, that we need to collect or we need to construct. Then we need to note down the coordinates of the node points, alright. So, that we know that we denoted as coordinate information, and then we also have to note down the boundary information. So, boundary information is basically to take into account or to note down the boundaries, okay, or the edges of a given element, those which are coinciding with the Dirichlet boundary or the Neumann boundary. So, we have seen in the problem that there are some boundaries which are Dirichlet boundary, there are some boundary which are Neumann boundary, and there can be more than one Dirichlet or Neumann boundaries, okay. And now, in a given element there are 4 sides if we take a quadrilateral element, and there are 3 sides if we take a triangular element. Now, each of these sides may or may not coincide with the external boundary. So, there will be some internal edges that will not coincide with the external boundary, rather they are coinciding with the other edges of the adjacent element. So, we have to note down which edge or all the edges of a given element coincides with which type of external boundaries, that we have to note down. So, that is stored in the boundary information. Then we will obtain some information regarding the Gauss point and the corresponding weights, because we will be calculating the stiffness entries and the force entries numerically. In the problem that we have shown in the example, the integrations were carried out analytically or manually. So, in order to mechanize it, we have to follow some numerical integration process. So, here we will be following the Gauss quadrature rule, and for that we have to note down the Gauss points and the corresponding weights in the master element. Then we have to calculate the values of the shape functions and their derivatives at those Gauss points, because in the element stiffness entry we have gradient of Ni, gradient of Nj. So, those are the derivatives in the physical element, and we have seen how to convert those derivatives in the physical element and to the corresponding derivatives in the master element. And in the right hand side we have the values of the shape functions sitting, alright. So, all those shape functions and the derivatives are to be calculated at each of these Gauss point. So, that we have to find out. Okay. Next is, so these are all the prerequisite. So, this is all prerequisite that is necessary for carrying out the rest of the work. So, then what we will do, we will loop over all the elements, means we will put a for loop over all the elements, we will visit each of the element, find out the element stiffness and the element force vector. So, that we did in the example problem, but in that case we integrated manually. Here we will be using Gauss quadrature rule. So, here we need the derivatives of the shape functions, alright. So, we need ni hat comma xi and ni hat comma eta. So, all those derivatives we need, and we also need the values of the shape functions ni's and nj's. So, that we have calculated in the previous step, alright. Once we calculated the element stiffness and element force vector, now note down that this element force vector contains on the only the heat source term, alright. So, there is another term in the right hand side that basically carries the Neumann boundary part, alright. So, that is integral Qn Ni ds. So, that part we have to calculate. So, this term will be calculated in the next step, alright. Then, but this thing you note down that this we have to calculate only over the Neumann boundaries, alright. So, in that case we need the informations of the boundaries, alright, or the regarding the edges of the elements, whether it is coinciding with the Neumann boundary or not. Okay. Next, we will be putting this element contribution into the global stiffness matrix and the global force vector. So, this is what we call it assembly. So, we already told this is what is called assembly, right. So, here the loop over element ends, alright, and at the end we will get the global stiffness matrix and global force vector. So, we will term this as Kg and Fg, okay, global stiffness matrix and global force vector at the end of the loop over elements. Now, what we have to do? Now, we have to enforce the Dirichlet boundary condition. So, we have seen in the example using the linear independence of the phi i's, we basically enforce the values of the alpha i's, alright, that is the degree of freedom for the system. Now, what is this degree of freedom? Let us understand what is degree of freedom. So, when we are writing u is equal to alpha I phi I goes from 1 to the total number of degrees of freedom in the system, okay, total number of degrees of freedom in the system. So, here if we look at the construction of the shape function, we said that phi I is 1 at the ith node and it is 0 at all other node, but all other shape functions are 0 at the ith node. So, only non-zero shape function at the ith node is phi I, and phi I value is equal to 1 at the ith node. So, the value of u at the ith node is basically alpha I, alright. So, this alpha I represents the value of the unknown at that particular node. So, this is what is called the DOF. So, in the present case alpha I denotes the temperature at that point. So, we have only one unknown, that is the temperature in this particular problem. So, in the Dirichlet boundary we will basically put the values, or we will ensure the values of the alpha i's as specified by the Dirichlet boundary condition, okay, only those which are lying on the Dirichlet boundary. So, once we enforce the Dirichlet boundary, then we will be solving the system of equations, okay. So, we will solve k times alpha is equal to f. So, that we will be solving to get the value of alpha. Now, finally, what we will do? We will try to see how the results appear otherwise we will not be able to judge. Okay. So, we will see how to visualize the solutions and particularly the heat flux, alright, for the problem in hand. So, now let us go one by one. So, the first thing we will be discussing about is connectivity information. So, in the present lecture, so we have described each of these steps, okay, individually, and we have also shown the corresponding code that is developed in the MATLAB. Alright. So, before going into the code, you are suggested that you must go through the basics of MATLAB, particularly the multiplication of two vectors, then matrix vector multiplication. Alright. So, this kind of basic information you need to have in order to go through the code. So, let me define the problem first. So, we have taken the same problem that we solved in an example. There we took two triangular elements to solve the problem. Here we will take the quadrilateral element. Alright. So, here the domain is a square domain of side 1, left side is having a Dirichlet boundary, that is u equal to 0, the bottom side is insulated. So, there is no heat interaction, between the domain and the environment. Right hand side is having a heat flux boundary condition, the normal heat flux is specified, that is constant Q naught, and in the top side we have this same Neumann boundary condition, that Qn equal to Q naught. It can be different, you can take a linear or a parabolic heat flux distribution. Now, in order to proceed, first we need to collect the connectivity information. So, what is connectivity information? Connectivity information is basically the relation between the local node numbers and the global node numbers in a particular element. So, here that domain has been here the domain has been discretized into 4 square elements as shown in this figure. Alright. Here as you see, the elements are numbered in blue numbers, alright, and the global nodes are numbered in the red font. Alright. Now, we need to define the local numbers also. So, for each element I will define the local number as 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright. So, each of the elements we have defined the local numbers. Alright. Now, what we will do? We will just note down the corresponding global numbers, that is 1, 5, 9, 8 in this sequence. So, if you see, this row is basically denoting the local node number, okay, local nodes in a given element, and this column denotes basically the element number. Alright. So, if we follow, say suppose element 1, so element 1, the local node numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 corresponding to the global node number 1, 5, 9, 8. So, that is what has been noted in the first row 1, 5, 9, 8. So, in that order. Alright. Similarly, for second element, the global node numbers are ordered in the same way as that of the local number. So, it is 5, 2, 6, 9. So, it is written 5, 2, 6 and 9. So, if you look at the element 4, the local 1, 2, 3, 4 corresponds to 8, 9, 7 and 4. So, fourth element 8, 9, 7 and 4. So, that is how it is arranged. Alright. In fact, these are so global numbers, you just note down these are global node numbers. Alright. So, in fact, we are not storing this first row and this first column, okay, because we know that if I have to look at the third element, so I have to go to the third row, okay, and if I want to look at the local node 3 of element 3, then I will look at here third row corresponds to element 3 and third column corresponds to third local node, that is 3, alright. So, this is the global node number corresponds to the third local node of element 3. So, in this case all the numbers coincides, alright. Or let me take this example, say element 4, if I take the second node of element 4. So, how do I find out from this matrix? I will go to the fourth row, alright, and second column. So, fourth row second column will give me the corresponding global node number. So, in this case fourth row second column gives me the number 9, alright. So, this is how this matrix, okay, which is named as connectivity matrix will be stored, okay, and will be used some subsequently. So, if I have to go to the kth element and the corresponding ith local node, so I will go to the kth row of that matrix and ith column of that matrix. So, that number will be giving the corresponding global node number, alright. Similar way, the same domain has been divided into 16 elements. In fact, each of the elements in this case in step 2, each of the elements are divided into 4 elements, alright. So, that is how we have total 16 elements and there are total 25 nodes, okay. So, this is, you can say this is step 3, alright. So, in step 3, let me just demonstrate how this matrix is constructed following the same procedure. So, if I have to go to element 14, so element 14 local numbers are again 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. So, in this code this is how it has been constructed. The local numbering starts from lower left corner. So, 1, 2, 3, 4 of a given element. So, if I look at element 14, so the local node 1, 2, 3 corresponds to global 12, 9, 21, 25. So, element 14, 12, 19, 21, 25. So, the order is also important because it follows the same order as that of the local node numbers, alright. So, the column corresponds to the local node number, the row corresponds to the element number. In fact, we have started from step 1 where the whole domain is taken as one element. So, in fact, the whole domain is taken as one element, alright. So, let us denote this with blue number, element has been numbered as blue and the corresponding global node is 1, 2, 3, 4, alright, and the local number we have taken as 1, 2, 3, 4. So, if this is step 1, what is the connectivity matrix for step 1? So, it has only one element, so there is only one row. So, we say connectivity matrix in this case is having one row and local 1, 2, 3, 4 corresponds to 1, 2, 3, 4. That is how the connectivity matrix looks like for step 1, alright. So, same domain has been discretized into 4 elements first, that is step 2, okay, and then it has been discretized into 16 elements, that is we referred as step 3, fine. Now, note down here we have assumed only 4 node points because we have assumed the discretization has been done by taking quadrilateral elements with degree p equal to 1, alright. So, that is why each of the corner points has one DOF, alright. So, if we have to use quadrilateral element of degree p, then in each element there will be 9 nodes because it is p plus 1 whole square. So, p equal to 2, there will be 9 nodes. So, we have to take, in addition to that we have to take the middle points of each of the sides and the midpoint of the element, alright, and all those nodes are to be numbered locally as well as globally, and the corresponding connectivity matrix has to be constructed. So, in that case the connectivity matrix will be of size, if there are 4 elements, so then it will be 4 by 9, because there are 9 local nodes, so corresponding to each of the columns, alright. So, once we know the connectivity information how we have stored for the current problem, then let us discuss about the coordinate information. This we also have to store. Why? Because while mapping the physical element to a master element, we calculated the Jacobian, and the Jacobian basically contains the derivatives of the shape functions and the coordinates of the corner nodes, alright. So, we need to carry this information as well. So, in step 2, okay, what we have done, the local number we have kept the same, and we have formed a coordinate matrix. So, in this case it is coordinate matrix, okay, and the column corresponds to x and y coordinate of a given node. So, this column corresponds to, now this column corresponds to the global node number, okay. So, this is node number and these are basically the coordinates, x and y coordinates, alright. So, if I look at the fifth node, the fifth node, the coordinate of the fifth node is x equal to half, y equal to 0, because the domain is a square domain with side 1 unit, okay. So, the fifth node, okay, the x coordinate is half, y coordinate is 0. So, alright, that is how we will move. So, if we have to, suppose if we have to move a particular element and we have to find out the corresponding coordinate of a local node, say I want to go to element 3 and I need to find out the local node 2 of element 3 and its coordinate, alright. So, what we will do, we will go to the connectivity matrix first and take the third row, because that corresponds to the third element, and go to the second column of the connectivity matrix. So, that will give the corresponding global node as 6, okay, and from coordinate matrix I will go to the sixth row and obtain the x and y coordinates. So, that is how we will find out the coordinates, alright. So, in the step 3, similarly we have noted down all the information. So, this is step 2, okay, for 16 elements. In step 3 there are 16 elements, and as you see there are 25 nodes. So, there are 25 rows in this coordinate matrix, because there are, each of the row corresponds to the global node, and first column is x coordinate, second column gives us the y coordinate of the corresponding node, alright. So, as you see, if I go to node number 9, alright, so the 9th row gives us the coordinate as 0.5, 0.5, alright. So, this informations will be stored in the coordinate matrix, and in this case we are actually not storing the first column, because we know that node, fifth node corresponds to the fifth row. So, we will store only this n by 2 matrix, okay, in each of the cases. So, now it is very easy to discuss about the step 1 case, okay. In the step 1 case we had only one element, the numbers global node numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the coordinate matrix in this case will be, the coordinate matrix will be 4 by 2, because there are 4 global nodes. And what will be the node nodal coordinates, because each of them are having of size or length 1, and if this is the coordinate system we chose, so in this case it will be, first coordinate will be 0, 0, the second coordinate will be 1, 0, third one will be 1, 1, and the fourth one will be 1, 0. So, that is how the coordinate matrix will look like for step 1. Alright, fine. Now let us move and obtain the boundary informations. Okay, boundary informations are required to calculate the second term in the right hand side. Okay, that is the contribution of the Neumann boundary, and also to enforce the Dirichlet boundary. Alright, so we have to identify in each element there are 4 sides. Since we are using quadrilateral element, so in each element, if there is any side which contributes or which coincides with the Neumann boundary, we mark it with a positive number. If one of the edges of the element coincides with the internal boundary, we mark that edge as 0. Okay, and if some edge of that element coincides with the Dirichlet boundary, then we mark it with negative number. Okay. So in this case, here we have one Dirichlet boundary and we have 3 Neumann boundaries. Alright. So Dirichlet boundary we are marking as -1, this Neumann boundary we are marking as 1, okay. This Neumann boundary we are marking as 2 and this as 3, okay, all with positive numbers. Okay. All of them are Neumann boundary, but they are different boundaries. So that is why we are using different positive numbers. If there would have been more than one Dirichlet boundary, then we would have used -1, -2, -3 and all. So minus denotes the negative number, denotes the Dirichlet boundary, positive number denotes the Neumann boundary, and if there is any internal edge, that is denoted as 0. Alright. So let us look at the mesh for step 2. Alright, step 2. So if I look at element 1, okay, so let us define the local numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So 1 to 2 we are denoting that edge as local edge 1. Okay. Then 2 to 3 we denote as local edge 2, 3 to 4 we denote as local edge 3, and 4 to 1 we denote as local edge 4. So these are edge numbers. Alright, local edge number. So and this is same for all other elements, 1 to 2 first edge, 2 to 3 second edge, 3 to 4 third edge, and 4 to 1 the fourth edge. Alright. So the edge number basically is related to the local node numbers. Alright. Now the first edge of element 1, okay, coincides with Neumann boundary 1. Alright. So that is why the first entry, okay, is 1. Okay. So what this column signifies? The column signifies the element number in this case. Okay, and these basically local edge number, local edge number. Alright. So if you go to the first element, element 1, the first edge, okay, coincides with the Neumann boundary 1. So that is why the number is 1. First element, second edge is an internal edge, so that is why it is 0. First element, third edge is also an internal edge, so it is 0, and fourth edge is coinciding with the Dirichlet boundary, so it is -1. So similarly for all other elements it has been stored. So if we look at element 3, the first edge, so this is edge 1, edge 2, edge 3 and edge 4. So for element 3, first edge is an internal edge, so that is 0. Second edge coincides with Neumann boundary 2, okay, so that is why it is 2 here. Then third edge coincides with Neumann boundary 3, so it is 3 here, and the last edge is again an internal edge, so it is 0. So that is why all the edges are separately marked for each of the elements using this matrix. Okay. So the first column and the first row are not stored, only this part of this matrix has been stored, knowing that the row corresponds to element number and the column corresponds to the local edge number. So the same thing has been repeated for step 3. In fact, we have to do it for all the steps, okay, we follow. So, if you look at element 14, all the edges are internal edges. So, if I look at element 14, all the edges are local edges, okay. Whereas element 16, the first two edge are internal edge. This is coinciding with the Neumann boundary 3 and this coincides with the Dirichlet boundary, alright. So, this is 0 0 3 and minus 1. So, 0 0 3 and minus 1. So, that is how this matrix has been constructed and is stored in this BC type. So, this defines the type of the boundary condition, alright. So, if I define now the same thing for step 1, alright, if I define the same thing for step 1, we have only one element, the global node numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, alright, and what will be the BC type? What will be the BC type? The BC type in this case we have one element, so we have only one row, alright, and so we will start from the local edge 1. So, this is the local edge 1, this is local edge 2, this is 3 and this is 4, alright. So, the local edge 1 corresponds to Neumann boundary 1. So, this will be 1. Second edge coincides with the Neumann boundary 2. So, it will be 2. The third edge coincides with Neumann boundary 3. So, it will be 3 and the last fourth edge coincides with the Dirichlet boundary, that is 1. So, in this case there is no internal boundary. So, no 0. So, that is how these informations are constructed, alright. Now, these three informations either you can do it manually for simplified domains, but for real life problems the domain is of complex shape. So, in that case we can take help of any commercial finite element software where we can build the CAD model and we can extract this set of informations, maybe not in the exactly in this form, but you can find out how to store or how the software stores those informations, okay, following the manual of each of the softwares. You have to note down these informations, alright. There is a free tool also available for 2D problems like GMASE you can use to get this set of informations, alright. But in that case you have to follow the manual because the format may not be the format that we are using here. Now, once we collected all the informations regarding the mesh, now let us go and discuss about the Gauss points, because we will be following the Gauss quadrature rule. So, here I have demonstrated the Gauss points in different orders, alright. So, if you remember the one dimensional case, we said that if we have to integrate a polynomial of degree p, so we have to take nearest higher integer of p plus 1 by 2. That will give us the number of Gauss points that we have to where we have to calculate the integrand, okay, and multiply by the weight and then sum it over all the Gauss points. So, that we did in one dimensional case. Now, the same thing we have to repeat it, but we have to repeat it twice, once along xi direction and another in eta direction. So, here the second row I have shown, if I take 2 Gauss points in xi direction and 2 Gauss points in eta direction, what are the coordinates of those Gauss points, okay. Here we have denoted them in this figure as ABCD and the corresponding coordinates are shown in the second column. The third column shows the corresponding weight. So, if I have to calculate an integrand, suppose which is in f xi eta and over d a hat. So, we are integrating in the master element a hat. So, what we have to do? We have to evaluate that integrand at these Gauss points xi p eta p, alright, multiply with the corresponding weight, and then we have to sum it over all the Gauss points p equal to 1 to the number of Gauss points, alright. So, if I use this 2 point in xi direction and 2 point in eta direction, so total there will be NGP in this case is 4. So, there are 4 Gauss points. So, in the current code we have followed this 2 by 2, or we have used this 4 Gauss point thing, where how it is denoted or how it is inculcated in the code is shown over here. So, this is a snapshot of the MATLAB code that we are going to demonstrate. So, here you see the first row, okay, denotes the first Gauss point, okay. So, the first entry is xi and the second entry is eta. So, the first row is xi 1 eta 1, second row is xi 2 eta 2, third row is xi 3 eta 3 and xi 4 eta 4. That is how it is saved in the given code. And the second part, so we have stored the weights. In this case all the weights are 1. So, we have stored in a column vector named W2D. So, let us denote this, because this is Gauss point in 2D, weights in 2D. Since we have to calculate the integration of the boundaries to take care of the Neumann boundary part, so we have to do the integration over one dimension as well. So, in that case we have stored the Gauss point in one dimension, that is stored as GP1D. So, in that case it is plus minus 1 by root 3, alright, and the corresponding weight is W in 1D. So, that is how it is named, and it has stored in the this set of matrices and vectors, alright. So, if you want to increase the number of points, say I want to use 3 Gauss points in xi direction and 3 Gauss points in eta direction. So, there will be total NGP equal to 9. So, there will be 9 Gauss points, alright. So, we have to evaluate the integrand at these 9 Gauss points, okay, of which the coordinates are given, okay, and multiply with the corresponding weight, okay, and then we have to sum it over all the Gauss points. So, that is how we will be implementing the Gauss quadrature rule. Next, let us see how we have stored the shape functions, alright, because we have to evaluate the stiffness entries and the force vector entries. So, we have to evaluate the shape functions at the Gauss point, we have to evaluate the gradient of the shape functions at the Gauss points. So, for quadrilateral element with p equal to 1, we have already constructed the shape functions, okay, n1, n2, n3, n4, alright. We have already constructed the shape functions n1, n2, n3, n4. So, in the code we have written these 4 shape functions in a given row. So, n1, n2, n3 and n4. So, this is a row vector, alright. So, we have written as n1 function of xi eta, then n2 function of xi eta, n3 function of xi eta and n4 function of xi eta. So, that is how it a row vector format we have written. Now, when we provide the Gauss points, so there are 4 Gauss points, alright. Now, what this piece of code is going to give us is shown over here. So, we will find out the shape functions, all the shape functions n1, n2, n3, n4 in the first Gauss point, alright. Second row corresponds to the all the shape function values at the second Gauss point, alright. Similarly, the third row will give us the shape function values at the third Gauss point and so on. So, if we use 3 by 3 form or if we use 9 Gauss points, so in that case the size of this n matrix will be 9 by 4, because we have 9 Gauss points, okay, and we have 4 shape functions. But if we use suppose quadrilateral element with p equal to 2, then we will be having 9 shape functions. So, if I follow the same arrangement, then n matrix will become 9 by 9 if we use 3 Gauss point in xi and eta direction. alright. So, this is how it has been stored in the present code. Now, let us go ahead and look at how we can calculate the derivatives of the shape functions. Remember, we have defined the shape function in the master element. So, in terms of xi and eta. So, these ni's are basically ni hat. So, correct this part. So, these are ni hats, alright, which are in terms of xi and eta. So, we have arranged it like the first row corresponds to the derivatives of the shape functions, okay, with respect to xi. So, all the shape functions, okay, we have arranged it in a given row, but their derivative with respect to xi, and the second row corresponds to the derivatives of ni's with respect to eta, alright. So, first row derivative with respect to xi, second row corresponds to derivative with respect to eta. But since these ni's are functions of xi eta, so if we take a partial derivative with respect to xi, then it will be a function of eta. So, means the entries of this Dn matrix will be a function of xi and eta. So, we have to evaluate them at a particular Gauss point, alright. So, how we did that? So, for we have run a loop for k equal to 1 to Gp. So, if you look at this part, k runs from 1 to njp. Njp is basically the number of Gauss points, right. So, that is what we have calculated here, the size of the this Gauss point matrix in the row direction. So, how many rows are there in the GP. So, that I have stored all the Gauss points there. So, we have run a loop over all the Gauss points, and in each Gauss point, okay, we have stored the derivatives of the shape functions, okay, with respect to xi in the first row and derivative with respect to eta in the second row. Okay. So, the matrix becomes of size 2 by 4, alright, because there are 4 shape functions and first row is with respect to xi, second row is with respect to eta. So, here we have used 3 index. Okay. So, this denotes the third index denotes the Gauss point. So, if I put k equal to 1, the derivative of the shape functions, okay, with respect to xi and eta will be calculated at the first Gauss point, alright. So, this we have done for all the Gauss points. So, this will be done once. Okay. Now, once we are ready with the derivatives of these ni's, one thing you just note down that the column of this Dn matrix basically denotes the gradient of ni. Okay. This denotes the gradient of ni hat. Okay, you see that. So, this matrix, so a particular column in this Dn matrix denotes the gradient of a particular shape function, alright. So, the second column denotes the gradient of n2 hat, alright, in terms of xi and eta. So, that we have to note down, because we have to convert it into the gradient of the shape functions in the physical element, alright. So, now next point is we have to calculate the Jacobian, alright, because we mapped the physical element to a master element, alright, and calculated the values of the shape functions and their derivatives in the master element. So, we have to take it back to the physical element. So, in that case we need the take help of the Jacobian. So, in earlier discussion we have denoted the Jacobian, alright, that is del x del xi, del y del xi, first column, and the second column del x del eta and del y del eta, alright. Now, we know that while mapping we said that x is basically xi ni, alright. So, for a given element E, so I have to write xi E ni hat E, alright. So, and in this case I goes from 1 to 4, we have 4 nodes. So, I goes from 1 to 4. So, here we have removed the summation sign, as the repeated index I represents the same, alright. So, del x del xi xi's are basically the coordinates. So, these are constants, we have to take the derivatives of ni hat. So, del x del xi is written as xi del ni del xi, alright. Similarly, del x del eta is xi del ni del eta, alright. So, same thing we can calculate by the following line. We can note down all the coordinates, x coordinate of the node points and y coordinates of the node points, okay, in this form, and we can post multiply with the transpose of this Dn matrix, alright. If you look at this this matrix, this is basically the transpose of Dn, alright. So, if you multiply this, we see x1 del n1 del xi plus x2 del n2 del xi plus x3 into del n3 del xi, x4 into del n4 del xi. So, that gives us xi del ni del xi, alright. Similarly, the first row second column gives us the second entry, the Jacobian. Then the second row first column gives us this entry in the Jacobian, and so on. So, basically what we have to do, we have to note down the coordinates of the nodes, okay, for that particular element E, alright, and then multiply with Dn transpose, but Dn transpose depends on the Gauss point. So, these are evaluated at a particular Gauss point xi p eta p, alright. So, we have to evaluate this Jacobian at a particular Gauss point xi p eta p. So, Jacobian is a function of xi and eta. So, this matrix is constant, alright, for a particular element, okay, but as the Gauss point changes, the Jacobian will change. So, that we have to recalculate for each Gauss point, alright. Now, the next question is, we have to calculate the derivatives of the shape function in the physical element, that is what is lying in the stiffness entry. So, the gradient of Ni, so that is the gradient of Ni in the physical element. So, we wrote del Ni del x del Ni del y, alright. Now, del Ni del x has been written as del Ni del xi del x del Ni del eta del x, alright. So, product of this row this column gives us the first entry, alright, and second row this column gives us the second entry, alright. Now, if I look this closely, this is basically the transpose of the inverse of Jacobian. So, we have denoted this matrix as J inverse transpose. So, J we have already calculated at a given Gauss point. So, that we have to invert and then take the transpose of that, okay, and then we have to pre-multiply the gradient of Ni hat. So, that is in the master element, alright. And what is this? If I have to evaluate this at a particular Gauss point, I have to basically look at the corresponding ith column of the Dn matrix, alright. So, if I look at the ith column of the Dn matrix, that is basically the gradient of Ni hat. So, with that we have already calculated at the Gauss point, and Jacobian also we have calculated at a particular Gauss point. So, these are evaluated at a particular Gauss point xi p eta p. So, if I multiply these two, so we are getting the gradient of Ni in the physical element corresponding to xi p eta p. I have the physical point x p y p, okay, where we get the gradient of Ni, and that is what we are going to use in calculating the stiffness entry. Now, let us look at this piece of code where we are doing this. So, as you see, first we are denoting the corner nodes, okay, the local nodes. So, in this case it is basically the local node numbers, that is 1, 2, 3 and 4, alright, local node numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. Then what we are doing, we are going to each element. So, kth element we are going, okay, and we are finding out the corresponding global nodes, okay, the corner nodes we are finding out the global node using the connectivity matrix, alright. And then once we know the connectivity matrix, we are getting the corresponding coordinates by using the coordinate matrix. Okay. The first column of the coordinate matrix gives us the x coordinate. So, we are saving it in coordinate xk, alright. So, this is basically giving us the entire row of this coordinate matrix x1, x2, x3, x4. Similarly, for the same element we are getting the y coordinate from the coordinate matrix and storing it in coordinate yk. So, that is basically the second row of this matrix, alright. Here we are getting these as column vectors. So, we are taking the transpose of it and forming the matrix coordinate xy. So, this is the same as this guy, alright. Next, what we will be doing? We are going to each Gauss point. So, if you look at this, this is basically a loop over each Gauss point, alright. And then we are calculating the corresponding coordinate in the physical element. So, that is how we are getting, we are using x equal to xi ni, alright. So, these in n2d, these are basically the values of the shape functions that we calculated in the n matrix, okay, that we are storing in n2d. So, these are shape functions in 2d. So, this is giving the values of the shape functions in the pth Gauss point, and these are the coordinates. So, we are basically using xi ni, yi ni to get the corresponding coordinate in the physical element, alright. So, next, for a given Gauss point we are doing that. Next, what we are doing? We are calculating the Jacobian. How we are doing? We form the coordinate matrix that contains this whole matrix, alright. So, that is coordinate xy, and then we are multiplying with the derivatives of the shape functions, that is dn, okay, at a particular Gauss point p. So, we already stored all those derivatives of those shape functions in a matrix, okay, corresponding to a particular p. So, if we multiply that, so note down here we have taken a transpose, because here we are using dn transpose, alright. So, we get the Jacobian. So, this Jacobian is at that particular Gauss point, because we are running inside a loop or p. Then we calculated the determinant of that, that we will see how we use of it, how we make use of it, alright. And then finally, we calculated the corresponding derivatives in the physical element. So, these are the derivatives of the shape functions in the physical element, rather this is giving the gradients of ni's. So, this gradient of ni's, so we will get by multiplying J inverse transpose. So, this is the inverting the J, and then we multiply with the corresponding gradient in the master element, alright, that we have already calculated at the pth Gauss point. So, once we are ready with the values of the derivatives of the shape functions at all the Gauss points, now we can simply calculate the stiffness entries. But before that, in the stiffness entry and the force entry, we need lambda, that is the conductivity, alright, and the heat source term. Now, note down that these two terms, they can depend on x and y, means they can vary in the physical domain. So, they will be given as a function of x and y. But since we are evaluating all the terms in the stiffness entry and the force entry at each of the Gauss points, so we have to find out the corresponding physical point in the physical element. So, this we have already calculated as xgp and ygp here, alright. So, xgp, ygp is basically the x and y coordinate in the physical element corresponding to xi p and eta p. So, at those points we are evaluating lambda and the source term g, alright. Now, next we will be using all of them to evaluate the stiffness entries and the force entries for a particular element.